Hey there guys, this is DipGames420 here bringing you yet another figure review, and this time we're going to be taking a look at the original version of the S.H.Figuarts Super Saiyan Vegeta.
The OG SDCC Vegeta.
Let's not waste any more time on this. Let's jump straight into comparisons, boys. So right now I have Vegeta standing next to Super Saiyan Goku from Comic-Con 2011.
This is okay. This needs to stop.
Between these two, I have to say they really scale pretty damn well. Vegeta, as far as I'm aware, is supposed to be a little shorter, but this is usually how these two appear. So I'm fine with it.
Cancer.
Premium Color Vegeta was my very first review under this pseudonym. And with that, it wasn't very good.
By none other than Bandai Tamashii Nations Co.
I'll say that. You can really see the difference between these two. The orange in the Premium Color Vegeta's hair a lot better than the original Vegeta, but you can still see that the original has more shading in the hair, as well as the fact that the original has a lighter shade of blue, and the premium one has gold tips on his boots, while the original one has white tips. I've heard many people say that this Vegeta isn't accurate because he has white tips. This is incorrect, because if you go back and rewatch the Android saga in his fight against Android 19 and Android 20, you'll notice that Vegeta had these boots on. Without any other further ado, let's get right into the taking a closer up look at Vegeta's paint and sculpt, and I absolutely have to say Tamashii Nations completely hit a home run with this figure. It's absolutely incredible in this regard, and I truthfully believe this is what S.H.Figuarts Vegeta figures should look like. So you can see in the hair, when it's up close, you can kind of see the white tips in his hair. You can see a little bit of the shading. Doesn't pick up too well on camera, but it does exist.
Exist? Yeah, I've been trying.
You can kind of make it out there, just barely. And then in the back, you can kind of see it. Looks very nice. You can see Vegeta's face here, pretty well sculpted. The detail's pretty minimalistic, but it is painted, shaded, and sculpted pretty well. The neck is pretty good, but there is a detail that we'll get into later that hinders articulation. And the straps on his armor are sculpted and painted pretty well. A little bit sloppy, but they're not horrible. The torso is also painted pretty well. The sculpt overall is pretty good. There's some minor shading around his wrist that you can kind of make out on the camera. Same thing on this side. A little bit sloppy on this side where the blue meets the white, but it isn't that bad. And the legs are nicely sculpted. Again, for whatever reason, the camera isn't picking up the shading. I'm guessing it's just the screen in the back, but there is most definitely shading on Vegeta's legs. Don't you worry about that. You can kind of make it out on the back there that he has some shading. And on his feet, it's most apparent. You can see the shading around the toe there. You can see some shading around the ankle of his boot, and a little bit on this side as well. Full disclosure ahead of time, this is mostly how you spot a real Vegeta. It's not that stupid Toei sticker that people always say determines whether or not your figure is official.
Toy animation sticker, the sticker of authenticity. Toy animation is the toy animation sticker. Toy animation sticker. Toy animation sticker to show that this is not a bootleg.
The Toei sticker doesn't mean shit. I've seen official products without it, and I've seen bootlegs with it. If you look at Vegeta's feet here, what's this? You can very clearly make out the fact that Vegeta has prints on the bottom of his feet. And if we look at any other S.H.Figuarts figure, I just got him here, Mr. Holy Grail. They're also on his back. What do you know? I always thought that those meant that they were fake, because they said China on them.
There's a smart difference between ranks.
So from this shot alone, you can really infer that Vegeta does not come with much, and you wouldn't be very hard-pressed to say so, because he really doesn't. In terms of accessories, as you can very clearly see, Vegeta comes with 3 faces, the stern face that he comes with default out of the package, as well as an angry, grit your teeth face where he's looking off to the side, the vein popping. You can see, unlike Goku, where you'd have to separate the hair and then his face, Vegeta here, you just lift the entire face off and his hair, and then you get the spawn of Satan underneath. In all sincerity, this is still pretty well painted. It's not my favorite face on the figure, but it looks good. You can still see the highlights in the hair carries over to this face, as well as the shading. You can see his face is also very tan. Then we also get a cocky, looking off to the side, douchebaggy type of smirk.
You're a douchebag. 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 You're a douchebag. Douchebag. Douchebag.
Once again, painted decent. One pupil seems to be a little off compared to the other, but it still looks fine, and the paint, once again, is pretty good, and the sculpt work is also pretty good. As mentioned before, we also have the closed fist hands, which are standard, fresh out of the package, if you're lucky enough to get this guy mint on card. The fists are very nicely sculpted. There's also some good shading in there. We also get a pair of karate chopping hands. Here's some nice shading through that. Not too bad, not too bad. And the knuckles are each sculpted. Everything is sculpted and painted pretty nicely on this particular Vegeta. Lastly, we have the open palm key blasting hands, which again look pretty nice. Again, the shading carries throughout, and the sculpt work is clean. That about does it for Vegeta in terms of accessories, unfortunately. I kind of wish we had some more hands, like some clawing hands for the Gallic gun, or a shouting face. Let's cut the
Ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
Rhyme, it keeps on flipping into.
Moving on to the articulation here. Vegeta's head moves up about that high, down that far. And as I mentioned earlier, there is an issue with some sculpt work in his neck. He sculpted his Adam's apple. I don't know why, because 90% of the time you're not going to see it, but it does get in the way a little bit. You're going to have to break his neck to move his head. Even then, it still gets in the way a bit. The neck itself is on a ball peg that goes into the torso, and it does not allow for that great of a range. See, I'm really trying to force it here, and it doesn't move. Unlike the 2011 Goku, whose neck, albeit stiff, could still move. Then we get to my next big problem with the articulation. The waist. This is probably one of the worst waist joints on an S.H.Figuarts figure I have ever seen. It's really floppy. And second, if you pop it up, you get this. Looks ugly, unnatural, and I don't know why they did it, but they did. And it really doesn't afford any movement if he is in a completely neutral position. However, I cannot say the same for the arms, as they go all the way up, rotate at the bicep, bend in at the elbow pretty decently, pretty good hinging and swiveling at the wrist, and the legs do drop down, kick up that high, they go down that far at the knee, and then we have a double ball joint. And the more recent Vegetas also have this type of a joint. However, unlike the older Vegetas, However, unlike the older Vegetas, would you look at that? You can bend the ankle down and it's not going to look ugly. It doesn't look amazing, but you can still bend it down and it isn't as gappy. Unlike the abominations that we call the 2.0s, this actually bends in a natural way. You can see it doesn't cut too much of his ankle off. You have a weak little hinge at the toe. So even though I said that the waist joint is probably the worst on any S.H.Figuarts Dragon Ball figure quite possibly ever, Vegeta's legs can still afford some really good articulation in spite of the fact that the waist does barely anything. That about does it for Vegeta's articulation. Let's continue on. In terms of my final thoughts on this here Vegeta, I'd have to say he is a really nice figure. The paintwork is clean, the sculpt work is really good, and the articulation, aside from the waist, is really good. However, that just so happens to be one of his negatives. His waist joint does not afford much movement, and he does not come with that many accessories. So, overall, I would still recommend you get this Vegeta over any new Vegeta, but there are still some problems that you will encounter with this Vegeta. Just depends on how you work around them. And anyways, this has been DipperGames420, and I will see you guys next time. Catch you on the other side.
What? What?